What's going on, guys? It's Brandon, and I'm here with Major and Andrew, and we got together as friends, as teammates, and decided that we would have a conversation about what's going on in the world as it pertains to race and as it pertains to just other things. I've thought a lot about it in the last week about what I could do as an individual to try to be productive, to try to help create change. And the thing I kept going back to was listening and conversation, and actually having honest conversation with people that have different experiences, that come from different backgrounds. Because I think where we make mistakes is we don't listen. We don't really try to actively listen and understand the perspectives of other people. And if we do that more, I think we can actually create change. I think social media becomes this, it's a platform, it can be a good platform, but as opposed to just posting something and leaving that, actually working to have conversations and to understand our brothers. So, with that being said, these guys are here, very different backgrounds. I have a very different background. We have these conversations, and I think they can provide, hopefully I can provide some insight and some conversation with people from different backgrounds. So we'll just start with Major getting a chance to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his background, where he's from. We'll go to Andrew, and I'll fill in a little bit, and we'll just go from there. So, Major, man.
For sure. Well, just for starters, I'm from San Diego, California. Born 1986, so 80s baby. So just some context from my age, give you a little feel for where I'm at. I grew up in a place high on crime, gang violence, domestic violence, all sort of that walk from the low socio-economic atmosphere. That's just where I'm from. So when it comes to like a race, Black Lives Matter, the stuff that's kind of prevalent right now, just my perspective of growing up, stuff I heard, stuff I hear to this day, it was always like black and black was always like a fight versus each other. Kind of like a Civil War mentality, like a Bloods, Crips, he's dark, he's light. So it's kind of like racism was always involved in each other. It wasn't so much of a black and white thing where I'm from. It was more like amongst each other.
Yep.
So that just kind of giving you a feel for how I see racism.
And you had parents were around. Go into a little bit of that.
Yeah. So as far as like it's like a typical American story for the most part. Never met my biological father. I don't know who he is. Always been a mama's boy. So me and my mom. My dad was there. He was there in and out, but he was in my life, still in my life today. It just wasn't like me, my mom, my dad in the household. It wasn't like that. So broken home for sure.
Yep.
Just context.
Yep. Andrew, what about you, man?
A totally different background than Major. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, Baldwin City, Kansas. Context in that we didn't have a stoplight until I was in high school. Again, I grew up biracial. My dad is black, my mom is white. So my perspective is a lot different, where I grew up in a predominantly white community, very small. Everyone knew each other. Everyone knew our family, which was, again, we were probably the only biracial family in the town, and probably, in our radius of the county. So growing up with a different perspective from racism, this is, I think, talked with my parents the other day, and just frequently about what's been going on. I think my thoughts and feelings are it's confusing. I'm conflicted because a lot of my family on my mom's side, that's predominantly who I spent time with. My dad's family grew up, they were all from Missouri. We visited them, periodically throughout the year. But my dad was home. He, small time in my life from like 1 to 10, he was playing baseball, so we traveled with him a little bit. And I wasn't I was too young to kind of witness anything that my mom experienced, bringing 3 biracial babies around the baseball field, especially around where my dad played, West Virginia, sometimes up north, where that just wasn't really, not accepted, but it was different. And I think nowadays things are still different. I think what's happened now with George Floyd, and I think it's woken me up, because I felt some guilt, because to me I kind of developed, some thought where it's like that hasn't happened to me. So when I got pulled over, nothing happened. I probably got pulled over 4 times in my life for expired tags. I think about, opportunities that I've had with job interviews and getting into school. Like, I've won every job interview. So it's really hard for me to kind of talk, or experience that type of extreme racism, because I just haven't experienced it. So for me, this happening, it's woken me up to be, more aware. For one, that can happen, and not to dishonor my ancestors or even that side of my past family where they didn't have the opportunities I did. So I'm listening too, kind of wake up and listen more with Major, who I'm around every day, my family. And I think, I can't sit here and act like a victim when it's, it's part of me, but I have some learning to do too.
My background real quick, probably closer to you, Andrew, but born in Indiana, moved to Arizona when I was really young, so I feel like I'm a native to Arizona. My parents were divorced, but I had a good support system on both sides. Never experienced racism. Went to Hispanic schools, but was very much accepted. Played sports my whole life, so I think I until recently always had this perspective that like people are good, and I believe in people. I think a lot of people are good, but it's complicated. There's systemic issues. There's these deep intertwined issues that we have to try to break down to understand. Some context is I did marry a black woman, and that exposed me to certain things that I was probably unaware of. I do remember the first time she came home and somebody had yelled the N-word at her. And I remember thinking like, God, that still happens. Like, that can't be. And how it affected her, and that's complicated. Very emotional. She was angry, she was sad. And that's something to try to understand. I don't know if I ever can completely understand, but at least I can try to understand what that would be like. But yeah, 3 guys, different backgrounds, and I think it's important for us to listen to each other and have this conversation.
Sure.
Major, I'd like to kind of talk to you about, so your experience coming to Scottsdale, because I think that's right. Like, you've been in this environment that's predominantly white, it's predominantly affluent, and I know you've been here how long now? Like
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
So like, what is that like for you? And what is that experience like?
Yeah, it's definitely context, because as I was saying, coming from San Diego, California, from City Heights, it's an area where personally I didn't see a lot of what we call white people. I didn't see that, so it wasn't an experience I had. As far as like in my neighborhood, yeah, the teachers, maybe like some law enforcement, just context, and coaches, just context. But like far as like my next door neighbor, people who I operate with on a daily basis personally, knew some, but it wasn't like here where I met you, for example, in Phoenix, in South Phoenix. It was similar to at home as well. Not only did I start working here in 2013, but I also moved up here at the same time. So it was just something like a culture shock, like just the eye test says I don't really see many people that looks like me. I didn't even see many people that looks like Drew, personally. The few times I did see that, they were professional athletes. So it was just context. I didn't really expect no one to look like us, so to say. And then working here, I'm so naive, like to race from black and white, because I didn't have the white experience. So by the time I came here, I don't know any better. I had no expectation. I'm just being myself at that time, you know. It took a period for adaptation for me. Now I start hearing things, seeing things. You know, I'll go to eat. The mother of my children, for example, I'm a father of 2. You know, my children are biracial. They look like similar to Drew. You know, so she's white. You know, I'm black. Kids are mixed. I'll hear comments when we go out to eat. Like people will be like, "Ugh, like that looks disgusting." So it's like, wow. It was like to hear it was you know, it kind of makes you a little uncomfortable. Having clients here for some music became a big thing here at the studio. So let's say if you and Greg are here, for example, you guys play some hip hop, for example. I walk in later. Well, clients look at it as, Major, what's this music? You know, it's rap music. I guess they assume because I'm black, I played the rap music. You know, so it's just context. So it's like I started to kind of see how levels of racism actually do exist, from assumptions and expectations and just preconceived notions. And that stuff does exist. It makes me a little uncomfortable at the same time, but I understand it. Like as I got to be close to a lot of white people, get to know their background, I start to see, well, they don't really have experience either with someone like me or someone like Drew. So for them, I'm not sure where their opinions or beliefs come from that pertain to me or my kind. I'm not sure. I would imagine they're hearing it vicariously through others. But you start to see like people have opinions, beliefs, buy-ins, and preconceived notions without personal experience, personally. So I think that kind of stuff does play a role in how people perceive other races. You have preconceived notions, but you don't actually have personal experience. So I think that's a big issue with what we're dealing with here today.
Have you experienced racism? Like, and I mean, again, there's layers of this, right? But like, let's say hardcore, you know, what most people think of racism, sure. not like these undertones, but like,
yeah, I get it.
You know, strict racism. Have you experienced
that? In context, so like what's going on right now, the George Floyd. So no, I've never experienced personally like being physically affected, where like my body had to really like, whoa, that was overkill. So no, I've never experienced racism from the perspective of violence personally. It's always an emotional thing where I'm always uncomfortable. I'm always in a state of fear, or what I call possible danger. I perceive it, I feel it, I know the history that exists, but like my body personally, no, I've never been impacted from a physical standpoint.
So what is that like? Like so you've never experienced it personally, but it's there.
It's there for sure.
And what is that like? Like what do you feel? Fear, trauma. Like there is trauma associated with emotion.
For sure. There's definitely the trauma that's associated with the things I feel. I'm a sensitive person, so I can process what something does to my body. So I can tell you, like, for example, here's context for you. If I'm driving from my home, which is around here close, driving down Scottsdale, let's say I see a cop, for example, cop car in my rear view, there's an actual reaction to my body, and I'm aware of it. My heart jumps. It's like it skips a beat. I can sense that. My hands get a little shaky. I always think to turn the music down all the time, whether it's up or not. It's just like an automatic reaction. My foot eases off the accelerator. I don't always brake. I'm not speeding, but it's just an automatic reaction. So those are things I start to go through physically when I even just see a cop car, for example. Introspection, what that is, I'm not sure, because again, I don't have a personal experience of a cop pulling me over and actually doing something to me where I felt like my life could possibly be on the line. Yep. It's never happened to me. So I struggle with understanding, like, why am I going through these processes? Well, consciously, I know the numbers. I know what exists. The prevalence, Black Lives Matter, cop brutality. It's context, I understand it. At the same time, I have 2 friends who are cops. So, just perspective. I don't think, me personally, I don't drive around, walk around thinking consciously a cop is going to do this to me. It's not my conscious thought. But nevertheless, I am triggered.
It's there.
Yeah, it's there, for sure. It's definitely there.
I mean, it's interesting because for me, when I see a cop, I think ticket. I associate it with money. Like, that's my experience is I don't want that $200 ticket.
For sure.
I've never thought, now I'm aware, but I've never felt in danger. And I've always been this, yes sir, no sir, like just taught to do that, but I've never felt in danger. And what about you, man? I mean, racism from a standpoint of that being here, do you feel like that's affected you? Or not necessarily? Do you feel like maybe you get it from like both sides? You're not black, you're not white.
Definitely growing up, yeah, not like what Major said in an extreme way where I was physically harmed. I think living here now, coming from Lenexa, Kansas, which is pretty similar to Scottsdale, just from a socioeconomic standpoint, like, you know, I learned how to, in a way, you know, put myself in a position where it's just like I'm you know, always try to guide myself to being safe, right? So whatever position I'm in, without even thinking about, you know, what this person thinks about me, I kind of jump the gun and make them feel comfortable first. And that's where I started like working with, again, the demographic that we work with was just, you know, predominantly white in this area, and that's kind of the background I started with, because that's where I saw opportunity, and that's where my parents guided me from small town Baldwin, where, no disrespect, I always remember where I come from. It's like they knew that there's more opportunity for me out there, so they guided me and pushed me towards, you know, obviously sports, education. There's nothing for you here. You have to, you know, keep continuing to grow. And I think once I started getting in the professional field, like I saw certain things, or, you know, without me even recognizing it, because I think even talking to my dad the other day, it's just like I never tried to ignore it, but it's just like I developed this sort of thick skin where it's just like I knew what battles to fight, where it's just like I'm not a person that likes to get or, you know, have confrontation with myself, because emotionally sometimes I feel like I can't handle it, like what Major said. You know, then on the extreme side, I know I try to play it to the point of like, if I see a cop and I'm driving, like I'm not going to give them a reason to pull me over, but there's still that instinct of like it could happen, and it probably has happened to me, whether it's expired tags or not. How many people get pulled over expired tags? I have like 4 times.
Right.
So is that an excuse? I don't know, but I think now learning more, just, you know, instead of me ignoring it and knowing how to work and kind of feed into working with all different types of people, you know, there's still some triggers. Like I look back now where, you know, good friends, like what you said, kind of seeing it from both sides, where it was like reverse. Like they see my light skin, I act, you know, not black, and then when something comes up, they think it wouldn't affect me, because they think like, well, you're not even black, so why does it affect you? Or knowing well like where I come from, or who my dad is, or my family, or little things. Even I remember in grade school, like certain remarks of even grown-ups coming up to me, hey, can I touch your kid's hair, or, you know, stuff like that. Like back then I didn't think it was a big deal, but now looking at different levels of, you know, ignorance, racism, no harm or not, I think, you know, we have to be aware of that, and that's how people learn and teach their kids. And what me and Jess are doing to try to prepare our kids, you know, they're going to be another mixed race. You know, they're going to be part Asian, part black, part white. So it's just like, what can we do to learn to teach them, hey, you know, you can't just see color, you have to accept color for what it is, and you're going to treat them like a human being. You care, but also know, like, you know, something might come back at you that's going to hurt you, and this is how you prepare for it and how you act on it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our preparation now, and how I kind of think about things, and I'm a lot more sensitive now with what's going on. And just, you know, talk with you guys and have more conversations about it. It's helping, but there's still confusion and thoughts that run through my mind.
I'll ask you this first, then I'll bring it to you.
For sure.
What does Black Lives Matter mean to you, and how does a non-person of color, how do we understand it? How do we help? But starting, it's like, you know, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think it took me a while to understand, and I'm still learning, because it's like I see different sides all over the map. It's from all lives matter, blue lives matter, and all of that is true. The best analogy I can think of is this, from what I'm seeing and what even Jess has told me about what she sees. It's like, as simple as, you know, you have 2 houses in front of you. They talk about, hey, both these houses are great, one's on fire. It's like, okay, well, I have water, so I'm just going to water every house. The other person says, well, that house is on fire. Shouldn't you put water towards that house? Well, the other person said, with the water, every house matters. But yeah, this is the one that needs attention right now. So if I water this house, does that not, give me that power to use water on this house? Well, no, but again, this house needs attention right now. The flames are burning pretty bad. Well, I'll hose down this house, but my house has mold. Does that mean I don't need to fix it? No, like it's too late now, like the house is burned down. So it's like the constant argument, obviously my question would be to that person with All Lives Matter, okay, I empathize with what you're saying, but it's just like, do you feel that there's a problem that needs to be changed? And I would just wait. If there's hesitation or is this a little, yeah, of course, it's like, okay, then I want to listen to you on what you feel that change should be, and talk with you, Brandon. I think we've talked to other people with different perspectives where it's just like, you can listen all you want, but sometimes like they don't have to take action. They don't have to do anything. It doesn't have to do anything with them.
Right. They're safe.
They're safe, and then doesn't matter because they don't want to put in the work or the research to kind of understand what's going on. And I'm just as guilty of it, where it's just like it hasn't affected me, but it's just like that's where I feel the guilt and shame, where it's just like I haven't done enough. So now how can I learn to respond to that person on why this movement, Black Lives Matter, is we need to pay attention to it. And with learning from Major, it's in the context of police brutality and what's going on for years and years and years of something that hasn't really changed, and how do we make that change? Instead of thinking like, yes, Black Lives Matter, but other lives matter too, but it's in the context of what's going on.
Well said, man.
Yeah, this is very complex and it's very torn for me personally. The whole context of Black Lives Matter, as Andrew said, I am growing in it to understand it from an experience, not just reading or hearing about it vicariously. Initially, when I'm asked, like, does Black Lives Matter, it's kind of like, yeah, obviously, lives matter, obviously. But in context, to not dim down when it comes to people who look like me, who experience things that I have experienced. It's in context for me personally. Black Lives Matter is in context to a particular avenue. I say with police brutality. In the context, I say that within, if one's a cop is under certain protocols and certain laws, presumably. Reasonably, they follow a certain law. The law is a philosophy of America. We all follow that. To protect and serve is their job. And if you're black, whether it's experience or vicarious experience where someone else black is getting murdered by someone who's to protect and serve, it kind of sends as a trigger to some things that's happened here in America already, like going back to slavery and racism, like going to every day in San Diego in our low social economic groups, having the experience for some who gets treated unfairly by cops. So Black Lives Matter for me is not really a question of does black, white, all these lives, are they equal? That's not the context in which we're talking about Black Lives Matter. For me personally, we're strictly talking about when it comes to police brutality and the nonsense and how come the numbers are so skewed where a black person is 2.5 times more likely to die from a cop than anyone else. So it's context. So does Black Lives Matter to some cops who have certain psychological functions to think to take a life of an innocent black man? It's context to that. Yes, Black Lives Matters in that context. But then again, for me personally, where I'm torn, is because growing up where I'm from, I always had an element of fear and danger in my environments. Now, I understand. We come from, it's more of a ghetto. It's more of a low socioeconomics. People are hungry. People are uneducated. People can't get jobs. That's the system. They can't get jobs. But at the same time, you're left to fend for yourself. And you got to get it however you can. So at that point, everyone is an opportunity, really, for you to come up with just the thinking back at home. Nevertheless, I understand it. But nevertheless, it doesn't matter that my skin complexion is black. If Andrew's hungry and he's black, I'm an opportunity for him at the same time. So when I hear Black Lives Matter, I get kind of, well, I do agree with what I see on TV is not okay. I do agree with that. Just seeing a George Floyd with a knee on his neck, like that's pretty, it's traumatizing. Like the feeling, it feels like it's me that's happening to. It's a pretty scary thing. I'd never expect that to happen by a cop. So yeah, it's just context. I would like to get into all that. I have conversations with my friends about this stuff. And it's like, I do agree that there should be a change, policy, standard. I understand all that. I don't know what it takes to change these things, but I do agree there needs to be a change with that, obviously. But at the same time, to not diminish what's going on now, I would like to go back home and feel safe in my own environment at the same time. So there's a change that needs to happen all across the board.
Yeah, I mean, there's layers, heavy. But like within that context, how does a person, so you're a white person, you're on social media, you have this deep feeling for caring about everybody, right? I think there's a lot of people out there. From both your guys' opinion, how does that person help? How do we facilitate change?
For sure.
As opposed to just sharing something, right? That's a part of it, and that's good. Like, do we work to get behind things? Do we change? You know what I'm saying? I think that's an important question. Is
sure.
How do we make change?
That's an awesome question. I do have those conversations with people who I've grown close to here, who are white, who are opposite of me. Talking to the people back at home who look like me as well, they have obviously their input as well because they're still in those environments. So I feel like when you're someone like you, and you are a person and you know where you stand, when you believe in equality, you believe in it. My experience with you says that's true as well. That's my experience with you. But it's not just about do you believe in equality in the way you go about me. It wouldn't just be about that. Are you aware of how our system affects people like me? And for you personally, you addressing the people who look like you, who presumably don't share your same ideology, where equality actually matters. They don't care for that.
Stand up for it a little bit more.
Oh, well, it's stand up for it no different when I'm around, when I'm not around. So like that becomes, you can hold yours accountable, just like I can hold mine accountable. I could talk to Drew what it's like for us he has a black father, now I come from a black family. The things we're exposed to, we can kind of hold each other accountable to how we conduct ourselves under that scope. But I can't hold another race accountable who actually embodies an ideology that my kind is inferior. I can't do nothing with that. There's no protest that can change that. So that's where it comes to like me and you being close and you being a caring person of equality. Well, it's like, is that just an emotional thing for you? Or is it something that you would like to see, have been married to a black woman? Like, is this context for you? Like, you stepping up and holding people that look like you accountable when you hear, see anything that conflicts with your concept of equality.
Yeah.
It'll take that. It's gonna take white people as well to work with black people. It's gonna take that to change what's going on. Just period.
Well said, man. Endo?
It's hard to back that up, Paige. It's like he said, I don't have all the answers, and I think, how do we make change? I think, again, it kind of starts in small steps where, again, me and Jess are already thinking about what we're going to teach our children. For one, how to treat others, but again, how they might be treated, and we're scared about that. Like, do we have to do that, 10, 15 years from now? We don't even have kids, and we're thinking about that. And that's kind of what we're preparing for. And for me personally, like, I think my expectations have to start at a standard of, heard this the other day, like count on the people that are with me, and I can't count the people that aren't. So it's like to fight battles that I know that, I might not win, or just like put energy into like try to change someone's perspective where I don't know how they grew up, or I don't know who they're listening to. So it has to start small. I'm not just gonna share books or tell people what movies to watch, because again, that might not be what they want to do. So for me, being a lead by my actions kind of guy, I have to educate myself in what I can do for my community and and what I can do for my friends and my family, and hopefully who those that care about me and my family are going to listen, and then they ask questions, and then they offer what can they do to help. That's kind of where I have to start. I know me being realistic, like I can't advocate too much strong push, because I know it's, for me, you know, my voice, you know, it's pretty quiet, but I know if I have something important to say, people are going to listen. So, but I have to start with actions of, you know, watching myself, of, you know, because again, I'm still have a lot of white friends, predominantly white friends. So understanding, watching what they're saying, and then being a man and sticking up for it if I don't agree with it, or have a discussion with them in private, not trying to de-educate anybody in that scenario, but you know, I have to do the steps too to educate myself on how to win arguments, or even how to debate, how to, you know, push them in the direction of like, look, that's not okay. I know it's something that we kind of grew up on, and because that's kind of how I turned it off. It's just like I hear discussions or racist jokes because they felt comfortable to talk to me about it, because I just kind of laughed it off and kind of went with it. Like that's how I kind of pushed it away. Now I have to realize, like, okay, when is a good time for that? When do I have to speak up? And you know, what actions can I take to be more a part of change? And that could be, you know, I feel like my time is the most valuable thing I have, asset. So it's volunteering, it's be more part of a community that might be in the struggle, and just reaching out on how I can help. And that's kind of where I have to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's don't allow it to happen, right? I think both you guys are saying that. Like if you believe strongly that there needs to be more equality, you can't allow it to happen in your circle of friends, the people you're around, and demand a higher standard, even if the person's intentions are not racist. Because I think that's that gray area that a lot of people operate in. They're not racist, they don't hate people of a different race, but they operate in this gray space where certain things are okay. And that's can't be okay, right? Like there needs to be more conversation when that happens, to start to direct it. And I think I'm a big believer in, you gotta really try to have empathy. You gotta drop your ego and understand what it would be like to be in somebody else's shoes. I don't know what that's like, right?
Yeah,
but I'm gonna try my best to understand that. And I think we need more of that. More people need to like not make it about themselves, that like, hey, like, you know, black people sometimes don't like me too. Like it happens both ways. Yes, it does, but like you said, like where's the fire? There is a stronger fire currently in our country there because of systemic, deep-rooted shit that in 2020, I think we should be a little bit further ahead of. And it goes, there's racism against Asian people, there's racism against white people, there is. But I like that analogy because it's the numbers don't lie, and I believe that, like it's deeper there. So I think that's a good way to look at it. You said something earlier.
Yes.
You were talking about color.
Yes.
And I want to, like, Major brought up a point, like he wants to no longer make it about black, white.
For sure.
But what do you, like, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Because we attach words, right? So it becomes, you're a black man, I'm a white man. Like, how do we become human?
Yeah, you know, and I say that in context without wanting to seem like I'm disrespecting, like something like Black Lives Matter, for example. It's just about keeping it in my own backyard. When we talk about, when we say the words black, white, personally for me, I go through a process inside my body. I can tell you I'm highly uncomfortable with the terms black and white. Here's why. You said you're gonna have kids one day, you and Jess. Well, being a father, you know, I come from the perspective of a father first. That's where I come from. You start teaching your kindergarten child about colors, shapes, numbers, sizes. Colors become very important. So that's how we learn, for example, markers and Crayola boxes for expression. We learn colors: black, white, brown, etc. Well, to have a child that has a white mom and a black dad, and then to say the words black like the Crayola crown, white like the Crayola crown, I would imagine that's confusing. So when I talk to my daughter, hey, get the black crayon, she gets the black crayon. When grandma comes up like, yeah, grandma's black. She can't associate the black crown with her grandma that looks like me. So black, I start to wonder, in America, when we say black, what are we talking about? Because we're not talking about the color of Andrew's shirt. So what are we talking about? When we call you white, you're not the color of this cap. You're not that color. So already the trauma and the words that we say, we don't actually mean color. What are we talking about? So when you say Black Lives Matter, Crayola markers matter, see, that's not context for me. So when we say black, I grew up being told at times I'm not black by people that look like me. So it's like I've always struggled to understand what does it even mean to be called a color. I never understood that personally. So with that being said, I think it's kind of it takes away the beauty for the human experience. There's no spirituality in calling each other black, white, brown colors. There's nothing. It's off context. So with that being said, if a guy comes in, I'm like, yeah, the black guy, like, what am I actually saying? It's kind of confusing. So I think it's just but our society does that. We accept that as language, but it's really horrible language. So I don't know how we change and how we call that. I'm not sure. I really don't care at this point how we change it. I just think immediately we get out of that pretty fast. It just has no positive connotation.
Hopefully someday we get we're just human.
Yeah, I mean,
is that possible?
Well, we're here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's context. My dad's dad, I think he would say where we are now is that possible? So I think it's always a pursuit. It's not vertical or horizontal. It's always going to be, of that magnitude. But it's just curious, like when you say, for example, this is a real thing. I'm taught where I'm from that Andrew's black and I'm black. But Andrew's mom looks like you. So, for that part, his mom, but does he just said earlier too, he grew up dominantly with his mom's family, right? So did his mom's family call him black? I'm curious, like, what was that like?
It's a good question. I can't think of one instance where it's like, because I was around my cousins a lot growing up. Again, they're all, white families, and then we were together a lot. I can't remember one time of, even anyone getting mad or relative getting mad, and that they threw in any emotion, any sort of race, or it's just like they, I was in trouble first before my cousins. Like, that never happened. I don't remember that at all. I think I was lucky enough to grow up in a family like that, where it's just like, my mom's kind of reversed. My mom kind of grew up without her father. She was raised by two women. So witnessing that's probably why I'm kind of a mama's boy, where I'm very sensitive about women in my life, sister, grandma, great aunt that passed away. Like, it's emotional, because it's like their teaching of, accepting, my dad, when, in a town like that, it just wasn't accepted in a way. Even at the university, where I just remember Dad telling me stories that, he played for the football team and head coach is well known in that area. It's just like, he told me stories that the coach would just spit on for no reason. But they were successful, so it's like that coach needed those players to win. So where does that mindset go? But then going back to my family, like, I can't remember any time where I didn't feel accepted, or they, these are my sister's little black baby. It was never like that. It makes nothing like that.
That's interesting.
I can't remember, yeah. Even a small town where, there's a lot of, far whichever direction you want to go, where there's like Confederate flags on trucks, there's license plates, there's a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, where it's just like, I have to have empathy for that, because how they were raised in an environment like that. But they treated me in a way where I was either ignored it, or I didn't understand it until I got older and knew it was like, okay, that's not okay. So I'm not if I see a truck like that at the fast food restaurant, I might go to a different restaurant. That's how I kind of learned how to decipher that, because there's shit like that everywhere. But in a small town like that, where that's, not even frowned upon, I didn't think about that. My family kind of protected it.
See, that's the interesting part, and that's why I say, me personally, I'm conflicted with it's like a tug of war for me when it comes to the Black lives in general, not just in isolation to the brutality to cops. It's very confusing because if Andrew is from where I'm from, you can't escape the fact you're going to be told from all your peers that you're surrounded by that you are black. For example, I just had for Christmas, my dad came to visit with his girlfriend, and they pulled me aside for a second because as my oldest daughter is approaching first grade, and now they say, "Hey, son, I got a question for you. So, when she goes to school, she got to take tests and stuff. What are you gonna say? What is she?" And I was like, what do you mean? "Well, you know she's black, right?" Well, Beth is white. I'm black. In my mind, they're just biracial. They're mixed. I have this conversation with friends, and they're like, "No, white supremacy sees it as if you're mixed with black, you're just black." And I do understand that what that looks like from a system. I get it. But at the same time, it's confusing because, like Andrew said, he's very sensitive and connected and attached to his mother, to the females in his life. Well, if you're from where I'm from, for example, they're pretty much telling you you're not nothing of your mom's kind. You are your dad's kind. And in most cases, the dad's not even there. So just think about that for perspective for you.
Yeah.
It's pretty confusing.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, we're about done, but I think I appreciate you guys, and it's interesting. I think maybe we'll do this again. Maybe it's something we can continue. For people watching this, if you have questions, these two guys, direct it to them. They have good insights. Direct them to me. If you like this conversation, maybe we can continue it. Again, my hope was to just talk. We could probably do this for a long time. To try to provoke conversation and listening and empathy and understanding and break down words and definitions and those things. Like I think that's one way to push change. So appreciate you boys.
Thank you.
Yep. Maybe we'll be back. I think it's worthwhile, man. I enjoy it.
Open talk.
Yep. All right.